So I just wasted my time a couple minutes ago making a video, and freaking Mac decided that it didn't want to record the audio. So I'll probably blow through this video super quick. But it is championship week. The college football season is almost over, and chaos did not continue as Notre Dame decided to end that party with a victory over the USC Trojans. Lane Kiffin just pretty much proclaimed how much of an idiot he is by trying to run it at a defense that has yet to allow a touchdown, a goal line touchdown. I don't think they've allowed a rushing touchdown yet all season, but I'm not 110% sure. So, actually, no, they did allow one to Pitt, but they haven't allowed a whole lot of anything inside the 10-yard line. So whatever Lane Kiffin was doing, trying to keep his offense pro style, you got to spread that team out there, and you got to attack them with your elite wide receivers. You're so stupid. He should be fired. He's a horrible coach. I don't even know why he was hired. You might as well hire some garbage freaking John Embry. Why not hire him? 4 wins right there, baby. Another key game, Stanford defeated UCLA. Was UCLA not trying their hardest, not showing everything? Would you rather play Oregon or would you rather play Stanford? Maybe that's some kind of crazy conspiracy theory or whatever, but Stanford dominated them. I don't expect them to dominate them as much the second time around. We'll get to that in a minute. Oregon now will find itself in and at large as they took care of Oregon State with relative ease. Florida dominated Florida State as the ACC looked terrible as Georgia dominated Georgia Tech. South Carolina dominated Clemson. I mean, just an ugly day for the ACC, losing 4 games to the SEC, all by double digits, 2 of them at home. Not a good week at all for that conference. Nebraska won ugly, but they will be playing in the championship game against Wisconsin. Blame it on the wind in that one. OU escaped Bedlam in a crazy overtime shootout. They had like 40-plus first downs in that game. I believe it was like 43, which is a lot of first downs. Most teams average around, or the best teams in the country average 30, above 30. Nebraska averages like 22. So that's a lot of first downs there. TCU took care of Texas, as that pretty much ended in a large possibility for Texas. Kent State slaughtered Ohio, and they find themselves ranked at 17, just outside the top 16. They will be ranked higher than a Big East team if they can find a way to beat NIU, and they will be in the top 16 most likely. So pray that NIU beats them so we don't have to watch Florida destroy Louisville or Rutgers and Florida State destroy Kent State in the BCS Bowl game, because that would be a disgrace to college football. That's about it from last week. Now let's get to my top 25. Notre Dame at 1. Number 2, Bama. Number 3, Ohio State. How good is Ohio State? Do they deserve to be ranked number 1 if they go undefeated in the AP poll? I don't think so, but it is pretty impressive to go 12-0 considering the circumstances. Urban Meyer's done a great job there. Oregon at 4, Georgia at 5, Florida at 6, LSU at 7, Stanford at 8, A&M at 9, 10 I've got South Carolina, 11 K-State, 12 Oklahoma, 13 Nebraska, 14 Florida State, 15 Clemson, 16 Oregon State, 17 UCLA, 18 Michigan, 19 Northwestern, 20 Penn State, 21 NIU, 22 Kent State, 23 Utah State, 24 Oklahoma State, and 25 San Jose State. Pretty much 20 through 25 would all get destroyed by top 15 teams, besides maybe Oklahoma State. The BCS Bowls, the Rose Bowl, I got Nebraska versus Stanford. That'd be an interesting game. Nebraska's rushing attack and great offense against Stanford's great defense and elite run-stopping defense. That'd be definitely an interesting game. The Fiesta Bowl, I've got K-State versus Oregon. Oregon with an at-large. K-State will seal it up this week against Texas. Sugar, I've got Florida versus Oklahoma. Florida will be ranked in the top 3, which ensures a BCS Bowl for that team. Orange Bowl, I've got Florida State versus Louisville. And then the national title, Bama versus Notre Dame. Heisman, Johnny Manziel's at number 1. The difference between Johnny Manziel and Robert Griffin III. Well, as Robert Griffin did not cost his team those losses. He performed pretty good offensively, but his defense was one of the worst in the country, if not the worst. That's why they had 3 losses. This year, Johnny Manziel has not gotten a touchdown in 2 of their 2 losses. He didn't throw a passing touchdown in those games. So he's got the best stats in the country. He's a great quarterback. Is he that deserving? I don't know. He's not a runaway, but I think Manti Te'o should win it. But, Manti Te'o's a defensive player, and, the only thing linebackers put up is tackles. And he's actually put up quite a bit of interceptions. I think about 7 or 8, maybe more. And then I got Braxton Miller. His team's undefeated. I can't put Colin Klein in front of him. The Big Ten championship game. Let's get started on the championship games. Let's get my predictions. Nebraska versus Wisconsin. If you don't care about either teams and you're not a Big Ten fan, go ahead and fast forward it to, I'd say, about 12 minutes. And then we'll be talking about Alabama versus Georgia. So a week ago, I would have said Nebraska's probably going to run away with this one. But Nebraska's offensive line hasn't played overly great in the last 2 games. And they had 2 key injuries. Baker Steinkohler is out on the defensive line, and Justin Jackson, the center, is out. And, he's a lot faster than Mark Pelini. I don't think he'd lose a whole lot besides his speed. I think the bigger loss is Baker Steinkohler. Wisconsin's going to want to pound that ball right at the middle on Nebraska now. They're without their best defensive line player in terms of stopping the run. He chews up blocks, and he's had a pretty good year for his senior year. A lot better than I anticipated. And he played his best game of the season against Wisconsin the first time around. So, talking about this game, I think Nebraska's defense is playing at the highest level it has all year. And that being said, Wisconsin's defense has played at a high level all year. They haven't had a point where they've played bad. Their worst game defensively was against Nebraska. Nebraska's best game against the run was against Wisconsin. So if you look at that right there, not looking good for Wisconsin so far. But while Wisconsin's running game has picked it up, they have still struggled against good teams. They still haven't really ran the ball over 4 yards a carry. They had some success against Ohio State. I still think they were below 4 yards a carry. They were below 4 yards a carry against Penn State. They were below 2 yards a carry against Nebraska and Oregon State. And they had half yard a carry against Michigan State. So a lot of work that they're going to need to do there. They're going to need to be able to run the ball in this one. I think they're going to have more success than they did first time around, and enough to keep them in the game. Now, Nebraska's offense versus Wisconsin's defense. You're looking at that 3-headed monster in the running game. Taylor Martinez, Amir Abdullah, and Rex Burkhead. Look for Braylon Hurd to even get involved. Look for a lot of the diamonds or bone formation where you got 3 running backs all around Taylor Martinez. That play has turned up 10-yard runs, pretty much every single time they run it. And I expect to see quite a bit of that play. Look for Nebraska to get that screen game going. They haven't used it a whole lot this year. They did open it up against Minnesota, and it's just another weapon in their arsenal. They're going to try to spread the field horizontally, get those defensive backs creeping up, and then attack them deep on play action. Nebraska's got a lot of speed on offense, and it's a tough matchup for a team in Wisconsin that plays really well. They're sound at tackling, great at tackling, probably the best in the Big Ten tackling-wise, but they don't have the speed defensively. That being said, they make tackles when they need to make tackles, and their linebackers stay on the field, Chris Borland and Mike Taylor, no matter what. Those guys are on the field, and they're making plays. So far this year, the only team that's really kind of exposed their lack of speed was Nebraska, but they didn't do a whole lot of that. Nebraska just wore them down. In terms of Wisconsin's passing game, they're facing the best pass defense in the country, and they're going to need to do what they did the first time around. Hit Jared Abbrederis deep and get Pedersen working. get him up on those linebackers and get some mismatches. I think we're going to see Ciante Evans did cover Jared Aberders in the second half of the Nebraska game and covered him very well. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays on them or if we see Stanley Jean-Baptiste. Both of those guys are great cornerbacks. Ciante Evans had a heck of a year, and Stanley Jean-Baptiste has been improving rapidly, and he'll be fascinating in the NFL draft next year. 6'2", big corner. Just got to work on those ball skills a little bit more. But Kurt Phillips is gonna have to get some short passes to start off the game, get some play action going. He's going to need to have a good day for Wisconsin to find some success on the ground too. I think it starts with the passing game and it ends with the running game. It doesn't start with the running game for Wisconsin in this one, I don't think, because they just haven't had a whole lot of success against teams. And if you look at what they did against Nebraska last time they faced, they had about 240 passing yards, which that's what they're going to need to do this time around. Nebraska is playing a lot better against the deep ball, but they can be exposed, lack of ball skills. But that's going to have to be huge for them, and Nebraska's going to throw a lot of blitzes at Kurt Phillips. He's an inexperienced quarterback. It may be his senior year, but he hasn't played a whole lot of games, and Nebraska's going to want to put pressure on him and hit him right in the mouth. So expect John Papuchis and Bo Pelini to be throwing a lot of blitzes at him. And Nebraska, they must limit mistakes. I don't think they can make as many mistakes in the first half as they did the first time around and win this one. They gave Wisconsin 21 points. 2 fumbles inside the 20 or inside the 30 gave Wisconsin a short field. A roughing the punter gave Wisconsin a first down and put them all the way up on Nebraska's side of the field when they would have been punting it to Nebraska. So, simple things like that could change this, the way this game turns out. And Nebraska's going to need to not turn over the ball like they did. So, Wisconsin's going to have to run the ball between the tackles, and I think they will. They're going to have enough success, probably get around 175 yards rushing the ball. But I don't think they have as much success throwing the ball as they did the first time around. I expect Eric Martin to go off, get a couple sacks in this one. Cameron Meredith's going to do a good enough job inside, splitting time with Thaddeus Randall, Kevin Williams, Aaron Curry, Chase Rome, who played really well against Iowa. So expect those guys to be rotating a lot with the loss of Baker Steinkuhler. Now, center-wise, it's either Mark Pelini or Cole Penzik. Not sure yet. Hasn't been announced. I'm probably expecting Mark Pelini to get the call. Cole Penzik's done a great job at guard, and he's played a lot of time at guard, actually. Mark Pelini may not have the speed of Justin Jackson, but he did a pretty good job, and he's played actually quite a bit this year. Wisconsin's not going to be able to run the ball outside of the tackles. Nebraska's linebackers are playing at a high level. They're going to need to pound Nebraska inside, let Monty Ball get downhill, and let him break some tackles. Don't be surprised if Nebraska does pull out a little bit of 3-4. They did in this one. They did in the one earlier this year, and there could be a little this year, especially with this time around, especially with Baker Steinkuhler out. Let's do some over-under here. I think Nebraska is by far the better team, and if Nebraska throws its best punch, this one's going to be a blowout, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Nebraska's only thrown its best punch once this year, and that was against Minnesota, where their starters outscored them 38-0 in the 3 quarters that they played. So, over-under, total yards, 400 for Nebraska. I think Nebraska goes over that barely. Wisconsin, I don't think they get there, and I think they're probably 75 yards short. I think they do get 175 yards on the ground, but only like 150 in the air, which will be short of 400. Taylor Martinez, total yards, 275. Probably a little bit under that, but I'd say it's a push. I think he'll throw for probably around 200 and rush for about 75, just like he did in the previous game. Maybe he'll have to throw for a little more. We'll see. The indoor conditions will definitely allow him to throw the ball better than he did against Iowa. Monty Ball, rushing 100 yards. I think it's a push. He'll be right around that, probably more than 100, but don't expect him to have a whole lot more than 4 yards per rush. And don't expect him to get 3 touchdowns like he did in the previous one. Turnovers, 2. I think both teams are going to have 2 turnovers in this one. If Nebraska does have more than 2 turnovers, it depends on where they are in the field. If they're super costly, it could cost Nebraska this game. But Nebraska hasn't had a whole lot of problem winning when they've had negative turnover margin. Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, they've done that a lot. They have a negative turnover margin, still find ways to win. And they've done it on the road. They can definitely do it in the championship game. But I don't think I think it's actually going to be a push for turnovers both teams with 2. My prediction is Nebraska winning this one 27-20. I think Nebraska gets a touchdown with about 2 minutes left to take the lead. And they'll be smelling roses and winning their first conference title since 1999. Going to be a great game. Definitely going to be excited to watch that one. So the SEC Championship, Bama versus Georgia. This game's interesting because Bama's defense is a good defense. It can stop the run. But here's the deal. Aaron Murray is a great quarterback. Now, he doesn't pose the dual threat ability that Johnny Manziel does, but he's got a better arm than Zach Mettenberger. So if his offensive line can give him time, which Alabama's defensive line just doesn't have a great pass rusher. They just don't have that this year. And their secondary is above average at best. I like Bama to win this one because of A.J. McCarron. I think he has a good game against a defense that is playing better, but still hasn't really impressed me. I think he finds Cooper deep a couple times. Kenny Bell out is a huge loss for them, but I think he does find Cooper. And I think they get that ground game going enough. I think it's mostly going to be in the second half that Alabama does its work. I think Georgia's probably going to go into halftime and probably in the third quarter with a lead, but A.J. McCarron leads them to a comeback. They get to that national championship. Georgia's looking for their first national championship since 1980, I believe. They've got more athletes on the defensive side. They've got some good pass rushers. They've got a great running game, and they're pretty balanced offensively. They're going to need that, get that running game going. Aaron Murray's probably going to need to he's going to need to play really well in play action. Set him up with some easy passes to start it off. If they can get a balanced offense against Alabama, watch out. But I don't think they do. I think Alabama, Nick Saban, and Kirby Smart scheme up a good game plan, and they get themselves into the national title game versus Notre Dame, 24-20. Pac-12 championship, UCLA versus Stanford. First time around, it was ugly. Stanford won. I think this time around it's going to be closer. Jim Moore is going to have his defense more prepared. I still like Stanford to win this one 27-24. I think UCLA does play better offensively, but Stanford in that front seven and Kevin Hogan offensively get the job done. And they'll be smelling roses playing Nebraska in the Rose Bowl. ACC, Florida State versus Georgia. Both of these teams were embarrassed last week by SEC schools. Now they play for a BCS Bowl. Florida State is better on both sides of the ball by far. It's not even close. Georgia Tech's a bad team. They're going to come out first half, probably play really good for a quarter. But Florida State's way better. And that Georgia Tech defense is awful. 52-13, I like the Seminoles to be pissed off and roll the Yellow Jackets to the Orange Bowl. The MAC, NIU versus Kent State. This is a huge game for the MAC. If the Golden Flashers can get a win here, they'll be smelling rose, or they'll be probably in a BCS Bowl game, and that's a lot of money for the MAC conference, a lot of money for Kent State. All the college football fans outside of the MAC better be praying that Jordan Lynch finds a way to get a win here. I think he does. I think he deserves an opportunity to go to New York for the Heisman. He's a great player, and I don't know how he's not on a team like Illinois or Purdue. I think he does enough. He stays hot, and Kent State's been doing it by getting turnovers defensively and playing really good defense. They do have a good running game. They're going to need to get that running game going and keep the ball away from Jordan Lynch. I like the Huskies and NIU to get a win here, 23-17, and I hope they get a win here. Other games, Texas at Kansas State. I think Kansas State wraps up the trip to the Fiesta Bowl right here with a win over Texas in impressive fashion. They got a bye week. They roll the Longhorns 42-16. Louisville at Rutgers. This is the Big East championship game. Louisville lost last week to a below mediocre. I mean, that team's not even average. That's a below average UConn team, and they lost in overtime. And Rutgers got blown out by Pitt. They've been playing good defense for most of the year. They were somewhat carved up by Pitt, and their offense has been okay. It's been pretty awful for most of the year. They're going to need to keep the ball away from Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy Bridgewater hasn't been playing very good in the last couple weeks. I do like Louisville to win this one 16-14. Could go either way. I like this one to be low scoring though, and neither teams are great on either side of the ball. And Rutgers has a good defense, so Rutgers good defensively, bad offensively. Louisville maybe bad defensively, but Rutgers' offense is so bad that they're not going to be able to really expose that. And then with Juwan Jamison, he's going to play, but he's questionable. I do like Louisville, though, 16-14 to win the Big East and go to the Orange Bowl. That's it for this week. Check back like next Tuesday. I'll put my recap video of Week 14 in the championship games, and then we'll talk about BCS Bowls when they're announced and the bowl games, give my bowl game predictions. And thanks for watching. Go Big Red.